History records the fall of man, the moment Adam and Eve were cast out into the wilderness. But few texts speak of what happened to the garden after they left. It did not simply vanish. It remained there, anchored on earth, filled with the raw, pulsating energy of creation. And at its center stood the ultimate prize, the tree of life. Lucifer, the fallen one, knew the rules. He knew that if his army could storm the gates, if they could consume the fruit of that tree, they would gain the one thing they lacked, true immortality. They would become indestructible. The war against heaven would turn in their favor instantly. And so the shadows gathered, not one or two spies, but a legion. The book of Genesis gives us a single, terrifying verse. He placed on the east of the Garden of Eden cherubims and a flaming sword which turned every way to keep the way of the tree of life. It wasn't a ceremonial post, it was a blockade. The demons could smell the life force radiating from the garden. It was an intoxicating scent of eternal power. The air grew heavy with the stench of sulfur and rotting flesh as the first wave of the horde emerged from the tree line. They saw the gate. It was open, but standing in the middle of the path was a single figure. He wore no heavy plate armor like Michael. He stood motionless, his wings folded, wrapped in a cloak that seemed to be woven from smoke and embers. This was Uriel, the light of God, and he was the only thing standing between hell and eternal life.
The first demon to attack was a beast of shadow, moving faster than a blinking eye. It thought it could bypass the sentinel. It leaped, claws extended toward Uriel's throat. In a fraction of a second, the darkness was shattered by a blinding orange flash. Whoosh! The demon didn't just die, it evaporated. Uriel had drawn his weapon. It was not a sword of metal, but a manifest of divine wrath, a blade of pure, concentrated plasma that roared like a jet engine. The text says the sword turned every way. This implies a weapon of constant motion, a vortex of destruction. Uriel finally looked up. His eyes were not human. They were twin stars burning with fusion energy. "The soil of this garden is holy," he spoke, his voice sounding like cracking timber in a bonfire. "Your filth shall not touch it." The horde roared in response. They didn't care about warnings. Driven by hunger and commanded by their dark masters, hundreds of them rushed the gate simultaneously. This was the moment the legend began. Uriel stepped forward. He swung the massive flaming greatsword in a wide arc. The heat was so intense that the rocks beneath his feet turned to glass. A wave of fire swept outward, crashing into the front line of the demonic army. It was not a battle, it was an execution. Ash filled the air, but for every demon burned to dust, two more took its place. The siege had officially begun. Minutes turned into hours. The sheer scale of the attack was overwhelming. This was tower defense on a biblical level. The demons realized they could not beat Uriel in a duel, so they tried to bury him under the weight of numbers. They climbed over each other, forming a mountain of writhing bodies, trying to crush the angel. Uriel fought with the precision of a machine and the fury of a storm. He did not tire.
Archangels do not feel fatigue. He spun the flaming sword, creating a protective dome of fire around the entrance. Every strike severed limbs, heads, and wings. The blood of demons, black and acidic, hissed as it touched his fiery aura. But the enemy was cunning. Winged horrors swooped down from the night sky, trying to bypass the blockade from above. Uriel didn't even look up. He thrust his left hand toward the heavens, and pillars of vertical flame erupted from the ground, incinerating the aerial attackers instantly. He was a one-man fortress. Yet the assault was relentless. The forest around Eden began to burn, ignited by the intensity of the battle. Uriel was surrounded on all sides. A lesser warrior would have faltered. A lesser angel might have called for backup. But Uriel stood his ground. He was the firewall of God, and in his mind there was only one directive: protect the tree. Suddenly, the horde pulled back. The mindless screaming stopped, replaced by a chilling silence. From the darkness emerged a figure towering over the others, a general of the void. Ancient texts might call him by many names, but here he was the anti-fire. His armor was made of absolute zero, radiating a cold so deep it cracked the burning ground. He spoke no words, only a low-frequency hum that caused bleeding in the ears of mortals. He wielded a spear of dark ice. He lunged at Uriel. For the first time, the flaming sword was blocked. The collision of fire and void created a shockwave that flattened the trees for miles. Uriel was pushed back a step. The general's ice magic began to creep up Uriel's sword, attempting to extinguish the holy flame. "Your light is finite," the demon hissed telepathically. "The darkness is eternal." Uriel looked at the creeping ice. His expression did not change to fear, it changed to pity. "You mistake a candle for a sun," Uriel replied. The Archangel let go of his defensive stance. He grabbed the blade of his own sword with his bare hand. His blood, pure golden ichor, dripped onto the fire. The reaction was nuclear. The fire didn't just burn, it turned white. Uriel broke the deadlock, shattering the ice spear and driving his shoulder into the demon general, sending him flying back into the horde. The real heat was just beginning. Uriel realized that this battle would never end as long as the demons saw a path. He needed to remove the path. He needed to become the barrier itself. He raised the white-hot sword high above his head. He channeled the full authority given to him by the Creator. The atmosphere ignited. The oxygen in the valley was sucked into his blade. "I am the flame that does not die!" Uriel roared. He drove the sword into the bedrock of Eden's threshold. Boom! It wasn't just an explosion. It was a supernova event localized on Earth. A wall of holy fire, miles high, erupted from the ground, sweeping across the entire perimeter of the garden. The demon general vaporized instantly. The horde reduced to atoms before they could even scream. The wave of fire cleansed the forest, chasing the shadows back into the deepest pits of hell. When the blinding light faded, the silence returned, but the landscape had changed. The demons were gone. In front of the gate stood Uriel, but he was no longer just guarding it. He had merged his power with the land. A permanent, swirling barrier of fire now separated Eden from the rest of the world.
No map would ever find this place again. No mortal or demon could cross this line without being unmade. Uriel had fulfilled his duty. The siege of Eden was over. The tree of life was safe, hidden behind the eternal firewall of the fourth Archangel.